Greetings from India. You are listening to the Business Talk podcast. I'm Deepak, your host. We are delighted to welcome Professors Daniel Trabucchi and Tommaso Buganza as our distinguished guest on today's podcast episode. Before we begin, let me introduce our today's guest. Dr. Daniel Trabucci is an associate professor at the School of Management, Politecnico di Milano, and research lead at the leading lab. His research focuses on innovation management, particularly in platform thinking. Featured in 2024 Thinker Safety Radar, he co-founded Platform Thinking Hub and SIM Platform, advancing innovation through digital platforms. Our second guest is Dr. Tommaso Buganza, Professor of Leadership and Innovation at the School of Management, Politecnico di Milano, the same institute. Dr. Tommaso co-founded Leading Lab and Ideals, a research platform on human-centered transformation. He teaches innovation and project management, leads the Project Management Academy, and coordinates innovation and training at Polomi Graduate School of Management. He is also a board chair of the Product Development Management Conference. Both faculty members are authors of the research-driven book, Platform Thinking, Read the Past, Write the Future, which has been widely praised and embraced by both corporate leaders and academics. In this episode, both faculty members share valuable insights from the latest book, The Digital Phonics Effect, How Legacy Companies Can Lead the Platform Revolution Without Burning Everything Down. So it's my pleasure to now welcome Dr. Daniel Trabucci and Dr. Tommaso Buganza to the conversation. Thank you, professors, for graciously accepting our invitation once again. We sincerely appreciate you taking the time to join us today and second time on our platform.
Thank you very much for having us. It's a
Thank you.
pleasure to come back.
Yeah,
Thank you.
it is, really.
Dr. Daniel, what key mindset shifts are necessary for legacy companies to adopt both platform thinking without dismantling their existing structures or culture?
Thank you, Deepak, for starting with this very relevant question. You know, in the first book, we were trying to assess kind of the opportunities that platforms can open up for established organization. In this book, we actually come up with real stories, real cases, real models that established companies used and therefore can use to foster innovation through platforms, actually building on what they already have, building on their assets that are not fully used. So we label them as idle assets, and actually finding a way to evolve from what they are. And that's where the title comes in. The digital phoenix effect. You know, the phoenix has this idea of actually burning again from its own ashes. And in a way, without burning down, we believe something similar can happen for established organization. So you start from the asset you have, you start from the relationship, the data, the knowledge, the physical spaces or product that you already have, and you embrace them into the modern world, into the digital world. And in a way, this is our wish towards established companies that for sure require a quite strong shift in mindset. We require leaders to embrace what happened over the last 20, 30 years to a certain extent with digital transformation, and to embrace many models that are key in the innovation management literature. I don't want to sound too obvious, but open innovation is key here. Being open to what is happening outside the organization, being open to collaborate with your competitors, being open to involve your customers in activities that used to be your own, and that's it, with a new view that is a bit more systemic, that is kind of stepping back from what you are doing, from your value chain, and is taking a bit more an ecosystemic perspective. So probably the key mindset shift is related to a kind of growth mindset approach, like the chance to learn new things, to explore new territory without forgetting who you are, what you've done, and where you are coming from. That's actually our purpose, not to destroy what you have, but actually to build on that. But for sure, the mindset needs to be welcoming towards this direction.
Very insightful. Professor Buganza, how does platform innovation differ in established organizations compared to startups? And what unique advantage do legacy firms possess in this transition?
Okay, so this is, in this case, you're touching one of our main points. So our research started, back almost 15 years ago. And we started by studying those apps that everybody started. So we started from Uber, from Airbnb, Amazon, and all of them. And of course, we developed a lot of knowledge about how they are built, how they evolve, what kind of externalities they use, and stuff like that. And then some years ago, that's much more recent, like 5 years ago, we had this sort of insight. So we said, it's clear that if you're a startup, you can create a platform, but what if you are a legacy company? So is it possible? Can you do it? And the answer is yes. And at that point, actually, we asked ourselves, big question that you're asking us, yeah, but what's the difference? So is it absolutely the same if you are a large corporation or if you're a startup? And well, the answer is no, and it's no on many levels. I would like to highlight at least two of them. The first one connects back to what Daniel just said. So this idea of assets. So when you are a startup company, you basically have no assets at all. So you need to build those assets up. And so you need to face, for example, a chicken and egg paradox. You need to find customers on both sides and so on. But if you are an established company, you might have some of those assets that are so difficult for a startup, and they are already in your company. So you already possess them, but they are somehow idling. Idling means that it doesn't mean that you're not using them at all. Probably you are already using them, but there is much more inherent value into those assets that you are not completely using yet. So there are many examples of this. Imagine John Deere, the tractor producer in the United States. At a certain point, they started to servitize the business model. So they created this smart farming. They put all the sensors on the tractor, and now they create a new service for the farm, and it's telling you what to do, analyzing the soil and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden, they realize that they have got a lot of data about fertilizers or about seeds. And they've got more data about fertilizers than, the same producer of fertilizer have. And this thing is already there. So they don't need to acquire data. They don't need to look for data. They already got everything. The only thing that they are missing, they are not using it. So the first way to answer your question is we need some assets to create value. And if you're a startup, probably you need to start from scratch. So you need to build up your assets from the beginning. If you're a startup company, you might already have many of those assets. So in a certain way, not only established companies can actually create platforms, they got an advantage. So they are in a position in which part of the work is already done. Then you need to extract the value out of it. The second way to answer your question is more related to the second book, so to the digital Phoenix, because the book is structured in three different parts. And the first one is trying to give an answer to the question how an established firm can use a platform. And, to make a long story short, then maybe we can give more examples later. But the point is that if you're a startup, typically you create a platform to serve an external customer. So when we talk about Uber, we think about, customers taking the ride or customers giving the ride. When we talk about Amazon, we think about companies selling and somebody buying. What we realized only by analyzing a huge data set of cases in established companies is that in some cases, the customer, one of the two customers, or even both of them, but at least one of the two customers is internal to the company. It is a function. It is a process. So this is something that normally startups don't do. They do not have already existing processes with problems, and they try to solve the problems with platforms. Instead, if you're an established company, you've got a lot of processes already, and you discover that maybe platforms are a way to reach your final customer better, okay, or maybe they're a way to serve better an internal customer. And so you can apply it to I don't know, procurement processes, HR processes, R&D processes, production processes, operations processes, post-sales processes, and so on. So probably these are the two main differences that I see. You got many things already inside. So you don't start from point zero. You start from point two, and then, of course you still have two, but you start from a very advantage point. And the other thing is that you can use it in many more ways, not only to serve the final customer.
Professor, the book highlights 5 strategic challenges that platforms can address. Could you please share 1 or 2 challenges, and how can a company determine which challenge to prioritize first on its platform journey?
Thank you, Deepak. Well, honestly speaking, I don't really have an answer on the prioritization, but I'd like to tell you something on how we got there. Maybe I leave to Tommaso the chance to go through the 5 problems, possibly. And as I was saying before, in the very first book, we try to open up towards innovation opportunities. Like there are assets, as Tommaso was saying, and you can build on them. And actually, we had this idea quite resonating with innovation managers that quite often are looking for opportunities to be exploited in some ways. But this was not really resonating with the vast majority of the other managers because, in a way, there are so many difficult things to solve in the complexity of an established organization that looking for something new is something that is often left to innovation managers or strategists. So what we've done has been the following, and we said, okay, let's try to do the process in the other way around. How common is to have platform thinking in established organizations, and how these companies are using it? We analyze all the companies out from Standard & Poor's 500. We got more than 800 initiatives. We classified them. We got only 140 cases that actually fit the definitions of platforms. And I think this is important. Many companies believe that they are doing platforms, but actually they are developing digital services. A platform requires multiple stakeholders, multiple customers that are mutually dependent and generate network effects. We tell more about this in the previous episode we had together. And with this definition in mind, we analyze these 140 different cases that answer to specific needs of the organization. So in my point, there is not really a priority in these 5, but there is actually the chance to help you as a manager in assessing where, according to the problems you are living in your organization, platforms can help you. We are trying to propose platform thinking as a solution rather than as a strategy, as an opportunity. It can be both, but in this case, we would like to offer it as a practical solution for the problems that you have. Obviously, the list of problems cannot be exhaustive, so for sure there might be other problems, but what we tried to do was to classify them, to cluster them for types of problems that the platforms can solve.
Well, I would say that I completely agree on this, and probably it makes sense in order to make it very, easy to be understood and very practical to make a couple of examples. So what do we mean by we identified the problems? So as Daniel said, we analyzed 140 cases, and we, at a certain point, we realized that the reason that these companies had to create a platform was not different in all 140 cases. So there were some commonalities, there was a sort of clustering process by us. And we identified these 5 different problems. Just to give you an example, you might have, for some reason, that your customer has got very fast changing demands and needs. And, some of those needs are actually part of your DNA as a company. So it's exactly what you want to do, develop new processes, new services, new products in order to serve your customer better. But there are also other needs that the customer has when interacting with your own product or service. But actually, that kind of need, you can even consider solving it by yourself, but it's not your work. So consider a company like Intuit in the United States. So for those who don't know Intuit is a market leader. What they do, they actually do some software for paying taxes. So the idea is that, especially if you are a small, medium business or if you're a freelancer, you can actually use the software in order to calculate the amount of taxes you need to pay. And they are very simple. So they got these solutions, and typically you put the data and they tell you what to do. But the world is becoming more and more fragmented and complicated. And so now people have an official job, and then they also work as Uber drivers, and they do a gig economy and stuff like that. So the situation is becoming a little bit more complicated. And in some cases, they realized that even if they are market leader, in some cases, their customers were, while using their own software, had doubts. It's like, okay, no, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I got to write this here or that, if this is with VAT or without, I don't know. This is not my job. And so how can you solve the problem like that? So you can solve it in a very linear way. So you can say, okay, I'm a software company. I'm into it. I create software. I'm not an expert of course, I know how taxes work, but it's not, I'm not a tax consultant, but I could hire tax consultant. And so when you got a doubt, you push a button and one of my employees is telling you the answer. So this would be a very linear way of solving the problem. You buy basically new competencies and you use them to create a new process. That is a suggestion. It's long to be done. It's expensive, and then you've got, for example, the problem of how many of these people do you want to hire. So, what is the level of requests that you've got? So, this is including a certain level of organizational complexity that is not related with software development. This is not related with the DNA of the company. So, what they did was completely different. They said, you know what? I can create a platform in which I open my software to tax consultant. So you can be a tax consultant, you can register on the platform, and when somebody needs something, they hit a button and you answer. But you are not my employee. So I don't have to guarantee you a certain level of request, a certain level of money. I don't have to take care of your training. Yeah, I don't have to pay you, the health insurance and so on, because you're not working for me. So I solve the problem of the customer, adding something that basically I don't want to add. So I let other people make their own business. So they become my customers because I bring work opportunities to them. And I can scale this very rapidly. So one day I got 10 requests, I can answer to 10 requests. One day I got 10,000 requests, I can answer 10,000 requests. I don't have to hire people. I don't have to assess people. So all of these things are not my business. So again, would be not true if we say they cannot do it. They can do it. But the question is, does it make sense? Does it make sense that I do that? Or I can decide not to answer to the need of my customer. But that's too dangerous. My customer will go away and will maybe find somebody else. So I want to help my customer, but I might decide to do it in a different way. So one of the problems is what's happening when your customer needs are changing rapidly. And in order to answer, you need to do something that is not your DNA, is not what you want to do. So this is the kind of things that we do. We identify problems and then we show you how many different companies try to solve the problem. There are 5 different problems. I just presented you one. Maybe we will see some others during the chat.
Professor Daniel, the book's 4-step methodology has been tested across various firms. What common pitfalls do companies face when applying this framework, and how can they be overcome?
Thank you very much, Deepak. You're highlighting one of the parts of the books that we actually care about. The end of the book, the third part, is dealing with what we call the platform thinking journey. So, how you can use platform thinking either to exploit an opportunity or to solve a problem. We actually created a card set for those seeing the videos. I'm showing it. It will be soon available for sale as well. And this is actually the result of a piece of research we are super proud of. We collaborated with almost 30 companies over the last 3 years in 3 waves of research. At the beginning, we were just using single tools, like you can look for opportunities with the idle asset canvas. In the second edition, we said, okay, we need to keep the complexity together. So we develop a huge amount of cards and we asked the participants to develop platforms going through a structured process, like identifying the type of platform, designing value proposition, finding ways to onboard different customers, and so on and so forth. It was too complex. It was managing complexity, but still, the level of knowledge on platform that you need to have to jump into that process was too high. So we reworked it. And now it has 4 phases: framing, what you are trying to achieve, opportunity, problems, what type of opportunities, what type of problems, design, what type of platform do you need? Is it really a platform? Does it really make sense for you to do a platform? Design the value propositions, design the interaction system, work on platform design. And then you jump into ignition, so how you launch the platform, and then growth, which is how you let it expand. That is the main idea behind platform thinking. So platforms call platforms in a way. And we also developed a GPT, so a private version of ChatGPT trained on all our research to help managers managing this complexity. And I must say that the results have been pretty good. We now have all the companies that worked in the last wave that actually develop a very cool platform project. So our main goal was to manage this complexity to make platform thinking accessible to everyone. Still, the pitfalls now are managed but still remain the same, which is a proper understanding of what platforms is, the fact that we are not talking about normal, usual digital services, but we are actually managing a complex system of value creation and exchange. And even though we are all part of that as users, we fail to understand it as managers, especially coming from established organization, because startups not having many resources, learn how to use it, enter with fresh eyes. Established organizations are built on the idea of suppliers and customers, on the idea of a linear value and actually exiting, escaping that mindset. It's complicated. So the main pitfall is actually calling platforms something that is a digital service. Just yesterday, I was managing a workshop and was like, okay, there are actually two sides, two customers. There are us, the company, and then there is the customer. No, that's linear, okay? You are missing the second customer. You are not your own customer. You need someone else. This is still the main pitfall. That's the reason why we redesigned the whole process. It's 4 phases and not 7, but it's structured on a cyclical question. So you have the question, you have possible answers, you have tools that support you in taking that answer, and then there is a milestone, the moment of truth. Questions that we ask you on your own solution to make sure that you are on the right track.
How can organizations effectively engage internal stakeholders, like employees' resistance to change, when launching platform initiatives rooted in legacy assets?
Okay, so this is you said that at the beginning. I'm actually professor of leadership and innovation, and this is pretty much connected with the idea of innovation leadership. So how you lead an innovation. So what we know, but this is not for platform thinking, this is for innovation in general. What we know is that there are some cases in which you introduce an innovation, and innovation it used to be called a competence enhancing. So you already know how to do things, and with this new technology, you do it better. So those are easy to be accepted. Then there are other innovations that are competence destroying. So in a certain way, you need to let go something because it's no more useful with this innovation. And this is, again, not only for platforms, it's in general. So this is a typical problem you've got in innovation leadership. How do you convince, especially your internal people, to let some things go, to stop doing some things, or to start doing new things, especially when they created part of their culture and success specifically on those activities where you're asking them to let go. So the problem is generic. But when it gets to platform thinking, it takes some very, very specific shapes. So one of the main problems that we observe again and again into companies, legacy companies, because if you're a startup and you start already as a platform, that's completely different. But if you are a linear value chain company, you are accustomed to see providers on the one side and customers on the other side. Shifting from these two, customers on the one side and customers on the other side, means that somehow that person, that company, that actor that used to be your provider now becomes a customer. It's even more complicated because in many cases you don't stop doing your general job. You're just creating a platform on top of what you normally do. And so the same company, the same actor is at the same time both a provider. So you are buying, imagine Airbus. What they do, they buy components like engines or like, technology for the cockpit, and they buy it from providers and they put it on a plane and they sell to the person. So you got a provider. But at a certain point, you realize that you have got all the data of all the airplanes that are flying for all the airlines. And you have got a lot of data about those engines and about those cockpits. And you understand that you can use those data to create valuable information for the producer of the engine. And you can sell this information to the producer of the engine. So at a certain point, you got this sort of cultural shock. So you got a provider, but is also a customer. And the main mistake that we see normally is that you let your procurement department to speak with your provider because that relationship was already existing. And is the same person, the same department, is also talking with the same provider when the provider is a customer. But let me be very frank and crystal clear. Selling is different from buying. And the mindset that you've got if you are a seller, if you are a commercial person, is completely different from the mindset, the tools, the way of reasoning that you have got if you're a buyer. Then now you need to completely change what you do. And how do you convince your procurement department to become, a customer-centered selling department? You don't. Basically, you don't. And it's very important that you still have somebody buying, but probably you need to change your own internal organization and create a new department that is selling to your provider. So this is something that is very so we need to understand that in the moment in which we've got another customer, we have to create operational processes to listen to them, to answer to them, to develop for them. So you need to have an R&D for them. You need to have a sales department for them. So this is the kind of change. What's the problem? The problem is that many people inside the company don't want to do it. And especially when you talk to the top management, imagining that you need to create and replicate. Now you've got two R&Ds, one for the airplanes, for airplane buyers, and one for your providers. So this is the kind of change that is incredibly difficult. How do you convince them? We still don't know. So we are in the middle of it. So this is part of the research that we are doing. We experimented, we got some good cases, some successful cases, and some failure cases. And we are trying to understand how to make it happen from the organizational point of view. I think you touched a very, very, very difficult point.
Dr. Daniel, how can legacy companies leverage data and customer relationship as network effect to build platform value without overstepping privacy or trust boundaries?
Data is actually our first love in the world of platforms, and we believe they are a great and relevant starting point for platform thinking. I think the ethical dimension come in the first place, much more than regulation, and that is varying a lot on this topic all around the world. and in many cases is a bit reacting on some problems that arise on the management of this thing. My answer actually is not coming from this book, but it's coming from a research that was featured in the previous one. And I would use the word transparency, making clear and understandable by the stakeholders involved what are you doing with those data, where the value is flowing. If there are privacy issues, be clear about it, manage them, be clear on what you are doing, even though in the vast majority of cases, the data should be managed in a aggregate and anonymous way, so privacy should be safe in the first place in the cases we studied. But still, I believe that becoming very clear and transparent on what is happening on the platform is the key dimension. And we actually demonstrated with a specific research that transparency is super scary at first, but doesn't actually impact the willingness to use a service. So it's not a real risk in terms of adoption, but can be a very strong enabler of trust.
What lessons can be drawn from the platform initiatives at companies like Siemens or X that other industries might replicate when building new revenue streams?
Okay, see, look, so the first part of the book, as I said, is actually based on three main cases: AXA, Siemens, and Eni. So three huge companies. So, and you're right. So the cases are very different among them, but they also share some very important commonalities. So if I got to say what is the most important lesson we can take from them is that you are a huge, large corporation, market leader, and you accept that somebody makes money with something that you created. And I know that it seems very simple, but it is not. So if you are a company with a very strong industrial culture, what you create is yours. And basically, take the case of Siemens. So they do turbines, so they do MRI scanning machines, and they already do some software on it. And probably they can do some more software, but at a certain point, they realize that they will never be as good as external partners doing only that. And so it's a little bit excruciating. So you need to admit that it makes a lot more sense if somebody else is using your assets to do innovation because they do better than you. And I still remember a chat that I still remember. I just had a chat this afternoon in a workshop with a very heavy industrial company that is embracing platform thinking. And of course they said, okay, but this is okay, and we will do this application, and this application, on that application we do it. Okay? And at a certain point we said, yeah, stop a second. Why should you do it? Because we are good at it. Yes, but if even Apple, which is Apple, is accepting that everybody is building innovation on their own systems because they admit that at the end of the day, the large quantity of external people have got more knowledge, more skills than what they've got inside, and they are Apple. If even they accept that, how can you imagine that you, as an industrial company, will be able to do all the services? This is not going to happen. So you need to accept that you are great in what you do, but you can enable somebody else to create value on what you do. And they say, but in this way, I lose revenues. Yes, maybe on that specific transactions, but now you got many more transactions. So at the end of the day, the game will work for the network externalities. So this is what they understood. It's not necessary that we do everything.
Professors, you both discuss leveraging generative AI as a co-thinker. What are some practical examples of how AI can accelerate platform design while complementing rather than replacing human expertise and strategic decision making?
Well, you're touching one of our dear research in this moment. We started, and it's already in the book, exploring this platform thinking GPT. And this is opening up a number of research Co-thinking, so using GenAI as a way to think through what you are doing, to develop new ideas, to challenge what you are doing, and not just using AI as an efficiency seekers. And we truly believe in this. Is inspired by a great work by Elisa Farr and Gabriele Rosani, two colleagues of ours that wrote a nice guide for HBR. And now we are exploring even something more, how GenAI can be used in a team, how can help teams in dealing with something complex as platform thinking. And actually, the experience we had with the platform thinking GPT start nurturing another research direction that we took, which is basically related to knowledge management. Knowledge management is one of the big topics in management that have always been a bit more theoretical than practical. Everyone talked about it for years. Theoretically, it's great. Practically, I cannot say it never worked, but in many cases, didn't deliver the results it was expected to deliver. Well, GenAI seems to have the possibility of doing that. So you talked about the possibility of complementing in platform design rather than replacing human. I actually believe that GenAI can open up the design of a new type of platforms. It can help designing platforms. If you go on the book, there is the link, even on platformthinking.eu, you find the link to get access to our GPT. It's free. You can use it and you let us know what you think about it. But I believe that something more interesting is happening with GenAI. GenAI is enabling the creation of internal platforms that goes back to one of the five problems that we highlight in the books, that is making inefficient transaction, increase the efficiency of transactions. Too often in the organizations, I know things that you might know, but this knowledge is not flowing towards you. And GenAI can enable the design of a brand new type of platforms for these type of purposes, in our opinion.
Professor, my last question. As digital ecosystem evolve, how can legacy firms ensure that their platform strategies remain adaptable and resilient against disruption from new entrants or changing customer expectations?
Okay, I will try to give an answer to this question, even though this is actually one of the favorite topics of Daniel. The reality is that there are many things that legacy companies can learn from digital startups that created platforms in the past. And one of these things is connected to how you manage the innovation projects and the development of what you do in a very agile way. So especially when you go in established companies, if they are very industrial, if they are hardware based, if they are heavily capital intensive and so on, they are correctly still using, in many cases, a very stage gate approach in which everything needs to be very clear at the beginning, and then you start designing, and then you start producing and stuff like that. Of course, if you do an airplane, if you do a boat, a vessel, if you do a satellite, of course, you cannot decide that you add a wing to the airplane 2 days before delivering. So this is something that you cannot do. So somehow, these companies have in their own culture a stage gate approach, which on the other side can be very slow in reacting. What we can learn, what they should learn from digital platform companies is how to be agile in delivering small parts and not the whole project at all, in continuously rediscussing what is the right next thing to do, introducing an agile approach into what they do. And again, this is going to be very difficult because if you've got a culture that is based on stage gate, and now you don't even have to cancel it and go into agile, you need to have both of them. So you will still be stage gate in producing your airplane, but you will be absolutely agile in managing the platform that is creating a system, an ecosystem on top of it. So this duality is typically something companies struggle a bit with.
Dr. Daniel, your thoughts, please.
Thomas anticipated me. Agility is key in my opinion. Something I truly like of platforms. Something that for me was important in matching innovation and platforms was seeing platforms evolving seamlessly. They explore, they try. Think about Uber. They did everything. They start delivering food. They start managing industrial shipment. They worked in autonomous vehicles. They work with drones. That's the stay hungry, stay foolish that Steve Jobs was talking about, and that the platform world made a mantra. Established organizations and legacy firms have legacy. So the fear of destroying what they have, the fear of not being faithful to what has been done actually prevent them to often do innovation. And we believe that stepping back, embracing new glasses, seeing innovation in a new way can actually open new doors. But that must be done, and I want to use the word must be done embracing agility because approaching platforms in a stage gate manner, in a traditional approach, in a waterfall manner, has been proved it's going to fail. We've seen amazing platforms designed by legacy firms falling down because they've been managed in a traditional way. So with goals that was just unrealistic for that type of business, with inventory management that is typical of a warehouse selling goods and not of a marketplace and things like that. So platform comes with agility, and I think it can really help even the more traditional part of the organizations. In the end, it's a culture, and it's highly related with innovation.
Listeners, as we wrap up today's discussion, it's clear that legacy companies are not destined to be left behind in the platform revolution. The book Digital Finance Effects offers not only a roadmap, but also the confidence that transformation doesn't require abandoning everything that made an organization successful. By embracing platform thinking, leveraging existing assets, and thoughtfully engaging with technology like generative AI, traditional firms can lead meaningful, sustainable innovation from within. The insights, frameworks, and real world examples from this book remind us that change doesn't have to be disruptive in destructive way. It can be purposeful, inclusive, and aligned with long-term strengths. Whether you are a corporate leader, strategist, or innovation enthusiastic, the challenge is to rethink your approach and how to see opportunity where others see risk. Thank you once again, Dr. Daniel and Professor Tommaso, for taking the time to join us and sharing your valuable insights from the book.
Thank you very much for having us. It was a pleasure. We hope to come back for the third one.
Yeah, thank you also from my side. It's always a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so much.